Hello, welcome to this video. We are going to talk about something that I'm glad is finally getting some coverage. Even News 12 spoke about this. The Southern Pine Beetles on Long Island. It's out of control. As you know, it's been out of control for a while. And this summer, because of the drought, it is getting worse. I mean, just on my hike in Deer Park, I saw that, and I saw this. Those are all trees that are infested with Southern Pine Beetle. And the problem is it spreads from tree to tree. You can clearly see it spreading. Here's one tree that's affected, and then it's going to spread to that tree, and then that tree, because of the lack of fire. There's several reasons why these beetles are out of control. Lack of fire, the drought. You have a forest that is not healthy and susceptible to these Southern Pine Beetles, and it is really bad on Long Island. I'm glad that it's finally getting some attention from the media. So News 12 actually did a story on this today. They actually spent 2 minutes and 22 seconds in Napeague because the Southern Pine Beetles are now in Napeague. And again, it's just spreading all over the Long Island Pine Barrens. It's devastating our pine barrens. Much more, we're getting hit harder than I think any other pine barrens in the Northeast.
Yeah, we're inside Napeague State Park here, just parallel to Route 27. And let me show you something right over here. This right here,
make this larger so you can see this
used to be a thick forest. It was cut down over the last week or so, all because of the Southern Pine Beetle. It's an invasive bug that loves to eat and destroy the native pitch pines here. And the only way to stop it is to take down the infected trees and some healthy ones around them. Officials say this is the sound of a forest hopefully being saved.
Obviously, we want to keep these undeveloped lands pristine, and it's just sad to see an invasive species come in here so quickly.
That invasive species is the Southern Pine Beetle. It's been here on the island for years, but recently it's taken hold here in Napeague State Park in Amagansett, infesting as many as 3,000 trees. About 10% of the park.
10% of the park.
The beetle burrows into the pitch pine bark and quickly kills the tree. So quickly, in fact, state park officials say it had to order these trees cut down to hopefully stop the beetle's advance.
We cut the trees down, and then we cut a buffer zone around the trees, hoping that the Southern Pine Beetle stays within that area and doesn't affect any other trees.
On the east end, the damage is obvious. Pine trees with brown tops. Those officials say are already gone. Park officials say they hope they can contain the beetle in Napeague, though they did find and remove a couple trees from nearby Hither Hills State Park.
We got in there very quickly. We got those trees out of there, and thank goodness we haven't seen it spread there yet, and we're hoping it won't.
Could we eventually regrow this forest?
The forest will grow naturally, yeah. It will take some time, but I'm sure, what comes down, other things will grow up.
Reporting.
Now, it could take years to see if this curated destruction will have any impact on the Southern Pine Beetle, and even longer for, the forest here to recover. Meantime, officials will be watching the east end very carefully to hopefully stop the Southern Pine Beetle's advance. We're in Amagansett. Andrew Enger, News 12, Long Island.
And I'm glad they did cover this, but they left out the reason why is because we don't have the fires. And it's sad it had to come to this, but if we had been doing the controlled burns like we should have been doing, this wouldn't be happening because it's not happening in New Jersey. It's happening here on Long Island because of the lack of controlled fires. It's one key way to prevent these beetles from spreading, all right? And there's an article on this that I'm going to read to you about prescribed burns in the Pine Barrens, all right? And we are doing prescribed burns in our Pine Barrens, but not nearly enough. All right, so this is an article here. Prescribed burns get underway in the Pine Barrens, and this article was from April 30th. I don't know if I ever read it here or not. So wildfire is central to the ecosystem of the Long Island Pine Barrens, but since the major wildfires here in 1995, rapid response to fires has, for the most part, kept them from burning out of control. While this may seem like a good thing for the thousands of people who live within the ecosystem, fire suppression carries with it a significant new challenge. Without regular cycles of fire and with the damage to pitch pines here caused by the Southern Pine Beetle, fuels are building up in the Pine Barrens, creating a potential for future wildfires to again burn out of control. This spring, the Central Pine Barrens Commission, with the help of $1.25 million in funding from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has embarked on an ambitious prescribed fire program planning to burn the fuels in the underbrush of more than 100 acres of woodlands in the Rocky Point Pine Barrens State Forest on Whiskey Road and Middle Island Ridge, and in the David Sarnoff Pine Barrens State Forest just off Route 104 in Riverside. Bob Pankow, a longtime wildland firefighter and incident commander, has been working for the Pine Barrens Commission on its prescribed burn plan since 2019. This new funding, for the first time this spring, has allowed him to hire a crew of seasonal firefighters to work from mid-March through May, augmented by an established DEC crew comprised of mostly of forest rangers, along with firefighters from Brookhaven National Lab and local volunteer fire departments. The conditions necessary for a good controlled fire are particular. The winds need to be just right, and the relative humidity and moisture content of the fuels need to be in a very narrow range, ensuring the safety of firefighters and the surrounding neighborhoods. When the weather looks right, Mr. Pankow, whose title in the field is Burn Boss, sends out a canvassing email to qualified firefighters, telling them to plan for the day and where to meet. On the last Monday in April, conditions were just right to burn about 5 acres of woodlands adjacent to a housing development in the Rocky Point State Forest. And I know this sounds great, but when you compare to what they do in New Jersey, it is not nearly enough. And we're going to do that. We're going to speak about New Jersey after we're done with this article. So it says, "I've spent a lifetime chasing and suppressing fires all over this country from people trying it at home," said Mr. Pankow. "Now I'm just an old burn boss trying to pass what I know on to the next generation." As firefighters gathered Monday morning at the edge of Curran's Field, a former field burned the prior week to manage the habitat there, Mr. Pankow gave a detailed briefing on the day's incident action plan. "We're continuing on what I call the south of Curran's complex. We've been putting together little pieces of this puzzle, and we're building little pieces of it. We've burned off Curran's Field and a total of 15 acres in the Pitch Pine Woods. We're in a pretty good position now to start putting more pieces of the puzzle together as we do this whole 123-acre unit. The acreage to be burned that day was much like a jigsaw puzzle piece, bounded on one side by a 25-foot wide fire break that stretches about 13 feet through the forest, on another by a fire line scratched into mineral soil with hand tools by a firefighting class of the New York Wildlife Incident and Management Academy, and on the other by a burned field. The breeze was blowing from the woods toward the field, allowing the crews to burn into the black, as they say, ensuring that if the wind conditions held, any embers would only get as far as the area already burned." So they talk about, I'm not going to read this. This is a long article. Actually, it's not that long. All right, I'll continue here. So 2 crews switched to stretch 2 hose lines along the perimeter of the area to be burned, drawing water from folding pools, frequently filled by an engine refilling on site. The hoses were there primarily to keep the fire from creeping up into the crowns of the trees, where it can quickly spread. "Pitch pine loves to crown," said Mr. Pankow, as he watched the 3rd crew, the firing crew, light a test fire at the edge of the field. "It wants to reset the whole habitat. If fire touches a needle, it just goes up. If you go back to the Crescent Bow fire 10 years ago outside the Brookhaven National Labs, that area was totally new. It's now a first successional habitat, which is so important to critters that live in the Pine Barrens. From 1931 to 2000, there are multiple large fires every decade in the central Pine Barrens. Those fires are the ones that really help reset the habitat. But large wildfires, and this is what's the problem is, but those large wildfires are not compatible with people living in what's known in firefighting circles as the wildland urban interface. And the problem is we've done so much urbanization in our Pine Barrens. I'm not reading this from the article, but that it's hard to have that healthy balance. Whereas in New Jersey, because they've preserved over 1.1 million acres of the New Jersey Pinelands, it's an ecological reserve, their Pine Barrens is significantly much healthier than ours. So getting back to the article, the Pine Barrens Commission has been laying the groundwork for public support of this project for several years, holding community meetings to explain to people who live in abutting the forest why prescribed fire is important for protecting their homes, and preparing the prescribed fire management plan and prescribed burn plan finalized in 2021. But having an actual live burn that doesn't disturb the neighbors is the real test of whether this program will get off the ground. It's been going in New Jersey for many years. I think it's a little too late, unfortunately. All right, getting back to the article. The last thing we want is to have a bad experience for these folks. That will make it harder for future controlled burns, said Mr. Pankow, as crews began to set to work. I want them to walk out here and say, wow, this is pretty cool stuff, and we feel safer now that they've reduced all these fuel loads. The day went off without a hitch, but that's not by accident. The weather, the fuels, and the plan all came into alignment today. The alignment of factors makes a difference in wildland fire management, said Mr. Pankow after the day's burn was over. Detailed planning and pre- and post-analysis is the key to determining if you are getting the results you set out to achieve. And there is plenty more work out there to be done. Work in Sarnoff and Rocky Point Forest is slated to continue into May, with burning to take place just off Route 104 on Riverside the week of May 2nd. But after May, the window of opportunity closes for the year. And here's the problem. We don't have the resources to burn what we need to ecologically, said DEC Forest Ranger Brian Gallagher, who has been burn boss for many local DEC prescribed fires and was working on this fire to get Kathy Swiger, an ecologist and prescribed fire program manager at BNL, qualified to lead a firing group. We need the right number of qualified people, and the weather has to cooperate. So this is the problem. They're not doing enough. It's only 100 acres each year, and that's not enough. Considering that New Jersey, for instance, now we're going to look at this article from New Jersey. It is a time-honored. We're going to read this article about New Jersey here, a little bit of it. All right, 1.1 million acres. All right, is the New Jersey Pinelands. All right, and they talk about, this is a good article here, how they do these things, and this is the point I want to make. The goal is to proactively burn 20,000 to 25,000 acres each year. That's right, New Jersey does controlled burns in 20,000 to 25,000 acres versus 100 acres on Long Island, all right? Yes, their Pine Barrens is bigger, but they're doing a lot more, and they're taking care of it a lot better. That's why you don't have the Southern Pine Beetles going crazy in New Jersey like you do here, all right? And the problem is when we look at the, and we have another thing here about a whole bunch here about the Southern Pine Beetle on Long Island, and it's full blown. And the DEC actually has a chart, and we'll show you how bad it is here. I think it's, if we go over here, we go to a link here, a map of all the confirmed beetle locations here on Long Island. You'll see here, Long Island is really hit hard here. You can make this a little bit here, make this a little bigger here so you can see that. Long Island is hit very, very hard. All the Pine Barrens are seriously infested, and this is a big problem. We haven't acted. We're just starting to realize it, but now it may already be too late. Very much like with climate change, all right? So if we don't address this, we're going to lose most of the Pine Barrens. We're not going to have a Pine Barrens left, and that's a big problem. You take a look at these infestations, and you have them in Edgewood too. You have a whole, this has been going on for a while. And I'm glad they're removing the trees in Napeague, but there are other infestations all over. They don't have the resources to attack all this. We don't have a forestry department on Long Island. All right, we don't have a forestry department like New Jersey does. They have a Forestry Service. They have the New Jersey Forest Fire Service. It's called NJFFS. All right, so NJFFS is the New Jersey Forest Fire Service. We don't have a fire service on Long Island. We should, but we don't. We don't have a fire service. We're just woefully inequipped to handle the Pine Barrens because, again, it's all about funding. The state doesn't want to put the money into it. And this is a really unhealthy Pine Barrens. You can see you've got a lot of crowded trees here, all right? This is Edgewood, all right? And this is an area you can see here are the beetles. And they spread along this whole road now. So a lot of these pines are dying, all right? Because there are no controlled burns. And the area that Edgewood that did have a fire is doing much better. But that area did not burn in that fire. And there are a whole bunch of other areas on Long Island where we have Southern Pine Beetle outbreaks that are all over the place. Again, we have because the Pine Barrens themselves are so fragmented by all this development. You don't have this large contiguous area. There are only a few places that are large enough, like Rocky Point, for instance, where you do have these large contiguous areas. And luckily they are, doing things in Rocky Point and Sarnoff, which are, two amazing areas, of course. Of course, here's EPCAL. But you take a look at the growth patterns of the way the Pine Barrens are, and you see a problem. Is the pines are all clustered. There's a lot of oaks because there haven't been enough fires. And all the Pine Barrens are like this. This is a big, big problem across the entire Pine Barrens. Too many oaks, not enough controlled burning going on, and the trees just get overcrowded. You know, it's not healthy. It doesn't look healthy. I mean, here we can go along Route 51 here, and you know, you see you got a lot of oaks in here, and you know, again, this is an area you see all this brush. This area looks a little better, but you know, it's when you compare it to the way New Jersey looks, it's very, very different. We can go over here in another area along River Road here. This is again going to kind of illustrate the problem that we have here. If this will load, of course. Yeah, this illustrates it perfectly. A lot of oaks here, and the pines just are all kind of getting squeezed out because there's no controlled fires. All right, it doesn't look right. All right, and that's why you have all these horrible Southern Pine Beetle outbreaks that are happening all over the place, all over the Long Island Pine Barrens. They're happening all over. It's terrible seeing what's happening. Here, we'll go to another area here, and let's see if we can show you again that, again, you see that the forest just looks, I mean, yeah, the colors are great and all, but this is not healthy. This is too, you know, let's go look at New Jersey, all right? We'll show you what I mean, all right? When I talk about spacing between trees and all the other stuff, let's go look at New Jersey right now, all right? And you can see New Jersey has a completely different look. So we're going to go to, let's go to Whiting, all right? All right, so let's go to Whiting right here, all right? You'll notice right away that you're seeing a lot more green here, all right? There's a lot more green here. I mean, this is all pines here. All pines. You don't have that many oaks. It's all pines because they have much more fires. They have more controlled burns. There are more larger fires in New Jersey as well because you don't have all this development. So this is what it looks like in New Jersey. You can see it has a completely different look to it. You can see that right away. The trees are much more spaced out. You don't see any oaks. You don't see any brush. It's just a pine forest, all right? And this is much healthier. This is a much healthier pine forest here, much healthier pitch pine barrens, all right? So because of the development on Long Island, like I said, we have lost so much of the Long Island Pine Barrens that they may cease to function as a healthy ecosystem because of that. And that, you know, when we start talking like this, it gets to the point where, you know what, hey, you know, I want to live in New Jersey already, you know. That's what it gets to the point. And once we don't have the Pine Barrens anymore in Long Island, really, what else is there? You know, that might as go New Jersey. At least in New Jersey, they care about their Pine Barrens. This is all a much healthier looking ecosystem here. All right, let's look around Double Trouble. You'll see the same thing. They do controlled burns over here. It's much healthier. Take a look at that. You don't have all that overgrowth. You know, this is a Pine Barrens that's allowed to breathe, that's allowed to function. So you don't have any pines that are dying here. As a result, they're all thriving instead. Whereas on Long Island, they're dying. So this is a real wake-up call, you know, and I'm glad News 12 covered it. And, yeah, they're starting to realize it, but New York is moving so slow with this. Between that and the fact that they still want to have these big developments, even after all this we go drag racing, let alone, you know, I mean, this is not good. It's not good at all. And you compare, this is New Jersey's Pine Barrens right here. All right, you have the development along the coast. Here's Tom's River, all right? But then all this is all wilderness over here. All right, and you can compare it to Long Island. All right, and you have just small little pockets of wilderness, and it just doesn't look the same. It doesn't look as healthy. And this is the problem that we have. There's some areas that look a little more like New Jersey. This area maybe looks a little more like New Jersey over here, a little bit. All right, but generally speaking, we need more controlled burns in our Pine Barrens, all right? We should be burning way more than 100 acres. We should be burning at least 1,000 acres a year, all right? I wonder if we have a dying tree over here. That's an oak. But you know, we have to watch out. We could lose all of this because the beetles are spreading very rapidly. The drought has made it even worse. And, you know, you have a lot of... Here's another example of what I'm talking about. We'll go over here and you'll see what I mean here. All right. You see this whole oaky area here. All right. So you have these little clumps of piney areas along the roads where, you know... but, again, if you get a beetle outbreak here, it's going to spread quick. And they don't react quick enough to these Southern Pine Beetle outbreaks. I'm glad that they are doing it out in Napeague. That's great. But there are other areas, and I'm gonna try to call the DE up. Here we go. Here we go. There's 2 right here. Those trees died from the beetles. Now, luckily, it didn't spread to these trees. But again, it could. It could. And, you know, it just goes from tree to tree to tree. To show you the kind of destruction that southern pine beetle can do, because there aren't fires, we can go all the way out to another area in East Hampton where they didn't act quick enough. And that used to be a beautiful area. Let me find it. It's right over here. Yes, there used to be a lot of pines over here along this road. A lot of them died. A lot of them died. You can see what we have here. So these are all dead pitch pines here. This is all from the southern pine beetle. All right, because again, look at how overgrown it is. This is an area this is a forest that is begging for a fire, and it didn't get it. And this is what happens. You got the dead pine trees all over the place, and it's horrible. There's another area. So, and they didn't act. They're all gone. Well, most of these are all gone. All right, because they didn't act. It even spread to a couple of white pines too. Believe it or not, they usually don't, but sometimes they do. You know, this whole area. I know this was back from 2018. But this whole area has been destroyed by the southern pine beetle. All right, and it's you're seeing so many areas of Long Island Pine Barrens being lost to the southern pine beetle, and it's really worse than I've ever seen it this year. Yes, the drought has definitely had something to do with it, but like I said, if we don't get this under control, this is going to be a big problem for us. We could lose all our pines, or most of them, and just have a few small areas of pine barrens left. That have been able to survive, the ones that have had the fires, like this area in West Hampton and Rocky Point. The fires are very important. We put all this goddamn development in the way and messed all this stuff up here, right? All right, and now they want to do drag racing over here. This is, you can see it's not healthy the way the trees are all clustered around like this. This is not the way it should be. This is not the way it should look. I'll show you another area here where there's been southern pine beetle outbreaks. It's over here on Ridge, on this road here. Oh, yeah, here we go. Perfect. This actually is from 2021. So here's another tree that's been infested with southern pine beetle. This is in Brookhaven State Park, bordering it. And again, they don't address it. It's going to spread, and then this whole stand of pines goes. It's going to spread to that whole stand of pines, and that whole stand of pines is gone. All right? I can see a couple of more trees here. These trees do not look very healthy. I know this is October, but they shouldn't be having that many orange needles. That's not healthy at all. And again, the absence of fire is killing these trees. Pitch pines need their space, and we're crowding them with development. Here's a house that wasn't here before. All right? So they built the house here. So now we can't have fires because it's too close to the house. You know, this is the problem that we have. And a lot of these pines are dying. And we lost a lot. We had more trees die over here too, I believe. Yeah, there was a whole bunch that died in back of this shopping center here. Over here, you can see there's some more over there. So it's just, everywhere you go, you see this on Long Island. Everywhere you go. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And there were a couple of big pines over here that we lost too, as well. So it's just getting worse and worse, and we're not going to have a pine barrens left because this does not look good. All right, this does not look good. When you go to New Jersey, it looks completely different. All right, let's go to New Jersey again. Let's go to Tom's River. Let's go to Tom's River. All right, let's go along Davenport Road. This is an area that's by development. All right. It just looks so much healthier. Look at how much more vibrant it is. This was actually as of this year, 2022. So you can see no southern pine beetles. I don't see any signs of southern pine beetles here. Nope, they're all doing great. All right, none at all. All right, so it's just completely different. I see a tree dying over there. That's a non-native. Looks like it might be a white pine. But other than that, the pitch pines are doing absolutely great. And it's just totally different. So it gets to the point where, hey, you know, maybe I should just shut up and go live in New Jersey already. Because if the pine barrens aren't here, then there really is no reason for me to be on Long Island anymore. So, that's why I'm trying to enjoy it while I still can, because, my days here are numbered at the rate things are going. And this whole thing with the Southern Pine Beetles is just part of that, and now it's just crashed on me. Look at that. Wow. All right. So what's going to happen, this is another problem I have with Google Maps. It'll crash, and then I go to Maps, and then now it worked again. Okay. At least sometimes I just have to reset it, But, again, you look at New Jersey's Pine Barrens, and it's just much, much, much healthier than ours. Again, here's yet another area that's west of Tom's River, all right? And you can see it just looks, look at how much of a vibrant it looks. You got the space between the trees. It's much, much, much healthier. No Southern Pine Beetles here at all, all right? And it was in New Jersey first. That's the thing. It was in New Jersey first, but they were able to get a handle on it relatively quickly in New Jersey, and they're not having too many problems with it. Whereas Long Island, we are having a lot of problems with it, and it's very concerning. It's very upsetting, and Long Island is just becoming very urbanized, and we've tipped the tipping point may have been reached where the Pine Barrens may not be able to sustain themselves anymore, and that is going to be very sad. Let's take a look at this area here. I think we might see some Southern Pine Beetles here too. Let's see. This is actually fairly recent. This was as of August 2021 by BNL. And let's see, I think I saw some signs of Southern Pine Beetle when I was looking over here, too. These pines look pretty nice, but, again, I mean, there's a lot of the Long Island Pine Barrens, but it could get to the point where we may not have. Oh, here you go, right there. Everywhere you go, you see it. Everywhere you go. This is BNL. Look at this. Here's another one. So, yep, this was as of last year. So you can see it spread through the whole stand. No, they're not removing the trees. The minute this is spotted, they should be taking all these trees out so it doesn't spread. But they only do it in select areas. So this is another problem. And why is it happening, you may ask? Because you have, again, all that crowding. And the beetles just jump from tree to tree to tree. No fires. So this is the problem we have on Long Island. So I wrap it up here because this could be eventually what all our Pine Barrens look like. And, when it gets to that point, you know what? You won't even have to beg me to go to live in New Jersey. I'll be running over there because once there's no pines here, there's no reason to be here anymore. So it's really unfortunate. I make this video because we are fighting a losing battle, not just against the corruption, obviously, which is not something I really do that much anymore, but the environment. We are losing the environment on Long Island. The pollution is getting worse. We're losing the Pine Barrens, and this is going to just keep happening more and more and more. What's happening is too little, too late. Unless we have a drastic change of course, where we're going to be stepping up the controlled burns. Instead of 100 acres, we need to be doing 1,000 acres. We need to be patrolling for these beetles. We need a Long Island Forestry Service, so when these beetle outbreaks happen, they're nipped in the bud immediately. All right, but that's not happening. All right. We're not seeing it far. It's just too little, too late, and that's my fear. Long Island Pine Barrens is my #1 mission on this channel. And once that mission is lost, then there's no reason to continue here anymore. So that is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching.